All right, Patreon Q&A. Thank you so much for your support. I think I said this in my video on the first of the year, but I wanted to let you guys know as well. Like last year was crazy. So the first 6 months or so, not only on YouTube and Patreon was I struggling a little bit, but also my other business that I have. So I'm a recruiter. I'm an independent recruiter, small business kind of thing. And the first half of the month was brutal. It was looking like for our family, it was going to be a very low revenue year. We were probably going to have to dip into savings very significantly, and it was looking pretty dicey for a little bit. But after I think it was the George Floyd situation, the channel took off, and you guys came through big. Tons of more Patreon support, and I was thinking to myself, okay, this is going to be a little bit easier of a time because of the support I'm getting through YouTube and Patreon. And to be honest with you, like I would have had to scale back the videos considerably. I wouldn't have deleted the channel, but I would have stopped doing daily content. I probably would have started doing weekly content at most because I would have just had to focus on other things. But you guys had a direct impact there. We've put out a ton of videos in 2020, and if I hadn't had the support on Patreon that I had, it would have been a quarter of the videos at least. So thank you. And so I hope that you appreciate the impact that you've had on this channel and getting this message out there. The channel's grown a lot, and I'm looking forward to 2021. Just one more time, thank you so much. Let's get to the questions, guys, because there's some good ones today. So the first question is about masks and requiring them at church. She says, if my church is requiring masks, do I leave? Or do I just keep going maskless until someone says something to me? Our pastor's mom just died from COVID, so I know there's going to be even more virtue signaling and pressure. I am literally the only person without a mask. You don't have to leave their church if they're requiring masks. You don't have to. I think that there's a good chance that churches that require masks might have some other issues, but if you love the church, you love the people, and you can put up with any issues that are there, then stay. I would stay. I mean, I think leaving a church should be such a last priority. But if they're not, so if they're requiring masks but not requiring masks, in other words, you go there without a mask and they're not kicking you out, then I think that you could stay no problem at all. But the minute they start requiring masks and they actually start enforcing it, like you can't come to the Lord's table, you cannot come to the worship service if you don't have a mask, then I would get the heck out of that church, no question. But I think what you're describing here is a church that you love, a church that's a good church, but they're doing the virtue signal thing that everyone in the world is doing. And so that's a problem. I think your presence there can be very positive. Going to the church without a mask, look, we don't have to go along with this, guys. We don't have to do this. I think that your presence there is probably a very good thing for the church in general. So no, you shouldn't have to leave as long as they're not forcing you, even though they're requiring it. I think that you could stay, and I think it probably be very beneficial to your brothers and sisters that are at that church for you to stay. I think that seeing someone who is not scared, who is not going to give in to the propaganda, will be a very big benefit to them. So serve your brothers and sisters. If the church is a good church, stay at the church, stay maskless and do your thing. But God bless you. I'll be praying for you for sure. Next question. This is a twofer, so we'll see. He says this. He says, 1, do you have any good ideas on how Christians can apply the gleaning laws of the Old Testament? Put differently, how can Christians present a dignified and godly alternative to the welfare systems? Yeah, I do. I do think that. I think there are even some charities that I think are really good at applying sort of this kind of thing. And they will go around to, like in New York, there's a charity. They'll go around to restaurants that, fancy restaurants, cheap restaurants, and they'll take their food that's about to expire, or they'll take food that they just have and are willing to give out, and take that and give it to the poor. That's an example. It's not perfect, of course, but it's an example. I think Christians in general should be giving to the poor from their produce or whatever they produce. They should have a certain amount set aside to give to the poor. I think that's definitely something that every Christian should do, no matter how much or little they make. And I think that's an application of gleaning laws as well. But I don't think that stuff should be enforceable by law. So in other words, in the gleaning situation, there was no penalty if you didn't do it, but obviously God would judge you. So I think Christians who do charity in general are already applying the gleaning laws in a way, but there's different things that you can do. I think that that this is something that Christians already do, not as much as they should, but they do already do this. So, I don't know if that's helpful, but just a few thoughts. And then let's see, general advice for Christian men on how to find a godly spouse. It's pretty rough out there. Thanks and God bless. Yeah, man. Well, you think you need to be a valuable man. You know what I mean? Like, you need to set yourself up as someone who is competent, who is capable, who's able to provide for himself and willing to do the work, kind of thing. And that's so if you're not a man that's got a lot of value, you're not going to attract a woman. But as far as finding a godly spouse, obviously you need to be involved in a church, and you need to be involved in that kind of a community. And I think that if you start showing yourself as a high value man, a high character man, you're going to start to see opportunities open up. See, it's not going to just happen, but if you demonstrate yourself as what's it called? Oh man, not thinking straight this morning. I've been doing intermittent fasting, and I'm in like probably the third or fourth day of restarting. I used to do this before, but in the third or fourth day is when your mind gets a little hazy for sure. But just like a go-getter, like someone who's got some unction to them. You know what I mean? I think that men will be willing to introduce you to eligible women and stuff like that. They're not going to do that to just anybody, though. They're not going to introduce their daughters to a guy who's has not shown themselves to be aggressive and not aggressive, but a go-getter essentially. So, but I would also recommend that you follow a ministry called It's Good to Be a Man. They talk about this kind of stuff all the time, so I would recommend that as well. Okay. But I guess my point is, sorry, I'll just finish that question. My point is to find a godly spouse, you need to work on yourself as a man first. And so to make sure that women would see you as a high-value mate. You know what I mean? Someone that can bring home the bacon kind of thing. Someone who has a good character, someone who loves the Lord, someone who would love them, someone who would protect them. Like, once you establish yourself as someone like that, women will be attracted to you. You know what I mean? So anyway, let's continue. Okay, 2 questions on this one as well. He says, if one of the evangelical denominations, such as the SBC or the PCA, splits over social justice, how long do you think the woke half of the split will maintain its orthodoxy on essential doctrines, such as inerrancy and the atonement? Which doctrine do you think is most likely to get scrapped? Probably like a decade to before they officially deny essential doctrines. But I think that it'll be instant, the people that start pushing on that. The woke half will instantly start accommodating more and more heresy, just outright heresy. I think that inerrancy is going to be one of the first to go. I think sola fide will go, but it'll go in a more covert way. Like, they won't say you need to do works, but they will obviously teach it. The atonement, maybe. I don't know. I think inerrancy is the big one, though, because the Bible is so problematic. You know what I mean? Like, the Bible is so problematic from the woke perspective that they have to deny inerrancy. They just have to eventually do it. So I think it'll be a decade before they officially proclaim heresy, but they'll put up with heresy almost instantly. So the church splits, instantly the heretics will see an opportunity and they'll continue to push. So that's my answer there. What were your politics like when you were an unbeliever? Were you a liberal or a leftist ever? No, I was never a liberal or a leftist. I was a libertarian, and I was a somewhat libertarian. I was the kind of libertarian that was way too libertine, if that makes sense. I was never a liberal or a leftist, but I was a hardcore libertarian, and I've always been more on the freedom side and stuff like that. So I haven't changed so much in that regard. But now, obviously, I see God's law as primary, and so I can't be a real like a hardcore libertarian. But I still, a lot of my beliefs still align with libertarianism. But all of that is I have to look at it through Scripture, and Scripture doesn't allow me to be a full-fledged libertarian. Anyway, next question. As we've seen, discussing the problems with the social justice movement is now in. No one seems to be discussing SBC Resolution 9 on critical theory and intersectionality. Have they forgotten about that? I'm not really sure who you're referring to. People do discuss that. But I think what's happening, though, Greg, is that people are talking about it in very not hypothetical, but very theoretical terms. Like, yes, I am against critical theory proper. But the problem is that they never apply it to real people. So I think they see an opportunity where we can still look like conservatives, but we'll never apply it to our friends who are pushing these narratives. And so the social justice movement moves on. So I think conservatives are sensing an opportunity to get their conservative bona fides without actually having to do the work. Like, you'll see people at Southern Seminary come out strong against critical race theory, but they'll never question Matt Hall, who's pushing critical race theory. Even Matt Hall will come out against critical race theory as he's enunciating the foundational tenets of it. And so it's like it's a rhetoric tactic. It's a tactic. So they are discussing the problems with the social justice movement, but the reason why I don't know exactly who you're referring to here, Greg, but I would suspect that the reason why they're not talking about specifically Resolution 9 is because this is part of the game. They're against it in theory, but when practice, when their friends Curtis Woods or whoever is pushing it, they don't want to say anything. They don't want to do that. That's against their whole thing. So they haven't forgotten about it, but this is part of their rhetorical game. There's just no question about that. All right, thanks for the question. Next question. Did you grow up being taught Christian principles, or are you and your bro the only converts in your immediate family? What were some of the biggest blessings in your life in 2020? Thanks for the content. Well, yeah, I actually answered already one of the biggest blessings in my life in 2020. That, just the way that God has provided after a very slow start to the year was just an amazing thing. I'm also very blessed in 2020 to realize that my pastor has even more guts than I thought he did. I thought he was a good guy from the beginning. Turns out he's an excellent guy. So that was a big blessing as well. But no, I grew up, both of my parents are Christians. Most of my family are Christians. So I grew up very clearly being taught Christian principles. My dad is a great father. Just like any father, he's not perfect, but he was a great father. He taught me Christian principles and all that kind of stuff. Now, I didn't become a Christian until I was an adult because I was a bit of a rebel, but that's how it went. We're very strong. God has been very gracious to my family. My parents are Christians. Both of my siblings are Christians. My extended family are Christians. My grandparents are Christians. My grandfather, guy's planting churches in Cuba, during all the shenanigans over there. Like, this is a very good testament to God's faithfulness and his covenant. It's just been great. All right. Let's talk to the next person. There's a few questions here. Hold on. I'll just see if I can answer all of them. Why not? Next question is, I'm looking for books on how to apply the Bible to government. Basically, I became a conservative politically through Thomas Sowell and Milton Friedman before I became a Christian, and I want to make sure my political economic beliefs align with the Bible. Any books, podcasts, or other resources you recommend? Absolutely. I'm glad you asked. Samuel, definitely look up Gary North. All his writings are excellent. He talks a ton about economics, a ton about politics and government in general. In fact, I think he has an entire commentary about the Bible and how it applies to economics. Gary North is fantastic. He also writes for LouRockwell.com, which you might be familiar with, and all of that. Hardcore Christian, great guy. Gary North. Any book by Gary North would be good. Also, my favorite book on this topic is R.J. Rushdoony's The Institutes of Biblical Law. If you want to start somewhere, start there. The Institutes of Biblical Law. R.J. Rushdoony, it was a genius, and he doesn't. Everything in the book is not right, but the way he thinks will help you very greatly. The way he applies biblical law to modern situations will help you very greatly. So R.J. Rushdoony, Institutes of Biblical Law, and anything by Gary North. And even if you want to go to LouRockwell.com and just search Gary North's articles, you'll find a lot of good stuff. All right, next question. Thanks for your videos. And that's not a question. So, but thank you for saying thanks for the videos. God bless you, man. Thanks for supporting me. Okay. There are always anomalies in every election. What are your top reasons for concluding that the U.S. presidential election had an illegitimate outcome? In my view, the best argument here will compare 2020 with previous elections to show that it stood out from the rest. Yes, mail-ins will confound this to a degree, but we need more than special pleading. I have a few arguments that I think are decent, but none of them are anywhere near airtight. For me, I don't need any more evidence than what happened on election night, when they stopped counting and then the next day found 100,000 votes. That's not an anomaly. That's just obvious, blatant, in-your-face cheating. And they did it in 2 states simultaneously at the same time and with the same result. It's just enough to get them up on top. I don't need anything else besides that. Nothing else. And that's that. But yeah, so the next question is, if you could move anywhere in the USA with an internet connection, what were your top 3 or 5 places you'd consider? I don't know, man. I'm glad to live where I am. So I guess I'll answer this question as if I had to move, right? So I'm not moving anywhere. I can move anywhere I want. Excuse me, but sorry about that. Just had to read an email. I can move anywhere I want, but I'm staying right where I'm at. But let's just say I had to move. Where would I go? I would probably have. Let's see. I either Florida, Idaho, or like I don't know. I think the Dakotas and Montana are all like the same. So somewhere in that area, most likely. All right. So hope that was helpful. Here is a person that says, "Hey, I'm joining the military next month and shipping off. I had made the decision to serve for personal and external reasons, but after this election, I feel bad about the external reasons. I'm glad to provide for my family, but I feel resentful about serving an illegitimate administration, likely to send me to war in a foreign place that has nothing to do with protecting America or our people. I want to serve, to at least be someone who is there trying to do the right thing, but I feel demoralized, feel as though I'm signing up to be duped by people who I don't care about. How do we keep the faith doing the right thing in this life when so often bad people with bad intentions get ahead? I hate the Christian ghetto retreat of not participating in the world outside of the church, but I'm hoping, hold on, let me just read this right. I'm hoping that good can win in this life, hoping that good can win in this life, too much to expect from it. What perspective of God and his purpose should I take with me to the army? Thanks again." Well, I get it. Yeah, I get it, because you sign up and then all of a sudden there's a new administration and you don't believe in their cause and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, man, it's not too much to hope for winning in this life. Not at all. I believe that the Christian church will be the dominant force in this life. So I think that Christianity will prevail. The church will be humongous. There'll be more members of it than stars in the sky, all that kind of stuff. So I'm very positive in that regard. But that does not mean that your life will be easy, and that does not mean that this will happen in our lifetimes. So the perspective you have to give is that is that God has expectations of you individually. He has commands for you individually, and you need to keep those in mind, and they need to be obeyed by you more than any other commands. And so as long as you're in God's will, you're abiding in his love by obeying him, then life will be good. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it'll be good. And so the perspective that you need to have is that you need to be laser focused on God, his commands for you, the moral law that he has for you, and that has to be your first priority more than anything. You know what I mean? That's the perspective that you need to have. And I think that you also need to understand that God is doing, so many things that you have no idea how he's using it, right? You're going to be in an army, and the leader of the army is a warlord. That's basically what you're saying. The leader of the army is a warlord, and that sucks. And you're in his army. So what do? Just keep in mind, well, you can't break God's law, first of all. So don't do that. If you're ordered to do something illegal, don't do it. But if you're out there fighting, bad guys, and let's just say you're fighting China or something, and they're bad guys, but you don't believe in the cause. Just know that God's using that conflict for His purposes, and they're good purposes. So you don't have to believe in every single decision, right? But you can't break God's law, and you can't lose sight of the fact that God is doing things that you don't have any clue about, and you're participating in things that you don't have any clue what the end result is going to be, but God does, and so trust Him. So don't break God's law, and realize that you don't know everything, but God does. I think keeping a perspective like that could help. Then again, I've never been in the military, so I don't know what else could help. If you want, I can hook you up with someone who has been in the military, who's a pastor and recently left, and he probably has some pretty interesting perspectives. So let me know. Message me privately if you want to do that, and I'll definitely do that. Okay. Lastly, do you believe that Bible allows age-segregated ministry in the church? Student youth groups, children's Sunday school, Awana programs, etc. Or do you believe that the view of the family integrated church approach is more biblical, where all corporate worship is all ages? I think that age-segregated worship or ministry can be okay as long as it's not the primary worship service. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with having like grades in school, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with having grades in Sunday school either. However, I think that oftentimes it's not ideal. So I don't think it's like a sin or something like that to have first grade and second grade and third grade. But I think oftentimes it's not ideal because children know a lot more than you think they do. And I think that my youngest son, a lot of his knowledge and skills are developing way faster than my first son. And I don't think it's just their personalities. I think it's because he's learning from his brothers and sisters, right? And he's learning the same lessons, but maybe he's not picking up everything that my 5-year-old is, but he's learning the same lessons. He's learning the same songs. He's learning the ABCs quicker. Like I think often it's not ideal to segregate according to age. So, I think the Bible allows it. So that's how you've asked the question. So the answer is yes, the Bible allows it, but I don't think it's ideal a lot of the time. I think that there could be a time and a place for it. There could be appropriate situations for it. But I think oftentimes it's less ideal than we think it is. I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe it does. Or like, I'm trying to answer the question as it's asked. So yes, it allows it. But I think that it's not as helpful as we kind of imagine that it is all the time. You know what I mean? My 5-year-old knows a lot more than my 2-year-old. But my 2-year-old's picking up so much that when my 5-year-old was 2, he didn't pick up. You know what I mean? I don't know. But anyway, yeah, so that's it. Hope you found this video helpful. God bless.